You know, they're selling y'all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
You'll do nothing. You'll do nothing. Shut your fucking mouth, you'll do nothing. You'll do fucking nothing. Now one of you will do nothing.
I'll tell you what, bro. You know, I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie.
I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, you know, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nick you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? MCR family? Another daily edition of the show. And it's not boxing, it's MMA today. And we're not joined by Mr. Robbie Hearns. We're joined by the more illustrious co-host, I will say. You know, definitely the better looking of the two. And you know, I would say, no, pause. And I will say this also. A way better nerd when it comes to comic book movies. I will say this. So we might get into some Marvel Netflix show shenanigans. But beside that, I'm joined by Anthony Walker, and we're going to talk, obviously, reviewing and previewing all the UFC and Bellator fights coming up last weekend and this weekend, obviously, and the news of the day. Anthony, how are you doing? And hope you're having a good day. How was the media day with Anderson Silva, all that stuff?
Having a good day, man. It's been a busy day for MMA media, so... As you said, Anderson Silva had a media day promoting 234. That fight is in Australia, so they had to do something for the American media. So he had an open workout at his private gym in West Hollywood. So after that, Kelvin Gastelum had a media lunch promoting UFC 234 also, and that was in Beverly Hills. So been crisscrossing the Los Angeles area a little bit, and I'm back home right now enjoying this fine frosty brew.
Damn, they were in the same place? I would have been heated about that. I'll be honest. I'm like, really, UFC?
No, they weren't like in the same building. It was probably like 10 minutes away from each other.
Okay, it's not bad.
And they're not upcoming opponents. So they were booked twice before, but it fell through for various drug-related reasons. And now they're just going to be on the same card. So.
Drug-related reasons.
Right.
I mean, those are probably actually legit drug-related reasons. Hashtag, was that the vial? No, that wasn't the Kelvin Gastelum fight. That was the second one, right? The second PD violation for Anderson.
Yeah, that was the second one. And they found it. They proved it to be a tainted supplement.
Yeah.
And for Gastelum, like the first time they were booked, he got booted off because he tested for weed in the Vitor Belfort fight.
That's right. I forgot about that. That was a good one. That's kind of a throwback. We haven't heard like too many weed suspensions as of late, like we used to back in like the mid 2000s. Those were good times.
Fortunately, you saw that it's kind of loosened up some of the weed restrictions. I mean, just get it. As long as you're not stepping in the cage high, who gives a kill? Who gives a shit, man? Just let it go.
And even then, let's be honest, because we're both in combat sports gyms quite a bit. A lot of the athletes that train are doing so while under the influence. I will say that, especially in jiu-jitsu. Like that's a very pervasive in that culture, I would say, from my understanding.
Absolutely, man. If you have been around fighters, especially MMA fighters, And in fact, a lot of boxers I know are very fond of the stuff. You've been around somebody that's fond of the stuff. That's it. Like,
there's
can't get around it.
There's quite a few world champions right now in the sport that I know from firsthand knowledge that they smoke weed. But that's neither here nor there. Totally a tangent that went somewhere. Obviously, we're going to review UFC Brooklyn, the beginning of the UFC ESPN era. Good friend of the show, and obviously your colleague and my colleague in a way, because I've been working at ShareDog and now twice now can I be credentialed for the Bellator card. Ayo. Jason Burgos was there. He was in attendance, so definitely go check out ShareDog.com for all of that content, all the videos and stuff like that. Jason did a great job over there. What was your sort of very general feeling, attitude towards this UFC ESPN Plus card or / ESPN card, because the prelims were on ESPN? Did it feel like it was like the start of it? Did it feel like because I remember being in attendance for the first Fox card, right, with Cain Velasquez Jr. Santos, and just being in attendance, like everyone was talking about that. Like everyone was talking about like, hey, this is the start of the era. Like everything's going to change now. Like we're mainstream now. Like there was a vibe about it, right? I know we weren't in attendance for this when we were watching on TV. Did it feel like this groundbreaking new era, new start of an era to you, Anthony?
Yes and no, because overall, a lot of the broadcast didn't change. I think that was like the graphics package was a little different, but overall.
But honestly,
the UFC controlled the production like they always have, so it didn't feel like a difference between that. I mean, Stephen A. Smith's presence, feel one way or another about it, but something like that. Okay, we're definitely watching this on the ESPN. Seeing the ESPN mic flag on there was like something that I paid attention to.
Yes.
I don't know. I think I want to see what the full product looks like on one of the big ESPN shows before I can make that assessment. I will say this, that I think overall the event was a big success.
Yes.
I will say that I think the card went kind of the way they wanted. There was a lot of action. It was, even one of the decisions on there was an absolute war. So there was some really good stuff on that card, and there was some really bad stuff that was kind of bizarre as well. So it was kind of like the perfect MMA show to introduce people who weren't familiar with the product.
And as you said, it was obviously a big event in a way. I think the first month of ESPN Plus, they got 1 million subscribers. Within 2 days, basically, from this UFC event, they got 500,000 plus subscribers on ESPN Plus. So it was obviously a huge event for ESPN. Like, this was obviously a smart deal for them to grab this audience in this multi-billion-dollar company on their side, because just look at the numbers for ESPN Plus. It obviously was massive for them. But beside that, like you said, I thought it was a fun show. Like watching from beginning to end. I didn't like the whole ESPN Plus prelims, ESPN prelims again, and then ESPN Plus main card. I didn't like going back and forth. I wish it was just half of it one, half of it the other. I'll be honest. But it did, like you said, it stood out, the ESPN logo. Like, it stood out on the side of the screen. It stood out on the mics. It stood out in ways.
Like the ticker at the bottom of the screen is advertising the next events. And, it definitely had a certain feel to it that we didn't see with Fox Sports. Definitely not with Spike TV. Now, what that carries on in the long term, I don't know, because just like the Fox deal, it started off with this huge bang. And you had Cain Velasquez versus JDS in the first event. Then you had Rashad Evans and Phil Davis. I think they were the next main event in Chicago. And that was like such a big deal because Phil Davis was this surging prospect.
That was a number one contender fight. Like that, the winner of that fight fought John Jones.
Exactly. Like there was a certain level of stakes attached to it. And we saw throughout time of the Fox deal, the stakes on those cards just started getting lower and lower and lower. And it took, a year and some change for that to really start happening. And I think it's possible we'll see it here. I mean, I honestly, it's really inevitable considering how thin the roster is spread out. But for right now, I say we just enjoy it for what it is. There's definitely some good fights on the horizon, and we should be happy with this. I mean, $5 a month to see a lot of good content. Also, one big thing that I loved about it, the event was paced so much better than Fox Sports 1.
Yes.
And that's been a constant complaint. I know you, considering the amount of content that you watch. I watch a lot of content. You watch probably twice as much as I do, with boxing included. And to sit there and watch an entire card, all the way through, that is literally your life. that's a life. And for a guy like me who has a full-time day job, I have a wife, I've got things that I like to do outside of that. God forbid I want to read a comic book or something. Like there are things that I want to do outside of fighting, and you don't have the time. At least with an event paced a lot better. I mean, this card was over at what, like 10:30 or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, it's pretty early. I mean, it was well before. I mean, the boxing main event, obviously the Manny Pacquiao, Adrian Broner pay-per-view was that same night. Go check out our review on another show, other podcast. That was
thumbs down to that fight.
Yeah, I paid for it. Don't even talk about it.
hey, you're doing this for a living, so you can at least get a tax write-off.
Yeah, and every time
it's all you suckers out there listening. They're watching this and listening to it for fun. Y'all the ones that got played. We getting reimbursed there, champ.
That is true. That is true. I will say this. I'm curious to see, like you said, what that first ESPN card feels like. I think it's Cain Velasquez versus Francis Ngannou, right? That's the first full ESPN main card. Because from my understanding, I think the prelims meter like 1.4 of the Nielsen rating, which is going to roughly translate to around 2 million average for the prelims. God knows what the main card will do in prime time on ESPN. I think it's going to blow out the other combat sport property with ESPN, which is Top Rank. For example, their best fighter with their best rating is Terrence Crawford. His best rating is what the prelims just did for this event last weekend for Cejudo Dillashaw. So just to put that in perspective, the magnitude of difference for a UFC event and just business sense for ESPN, they're going to push it like no other. I think they're going to push it a lot more than Fox did. And Fox pushed UFC incredibly hard. I think we're going to see an even bigger push from ESPN. But let's get to the fights themselves, unless you have any other general machinations you want to get to.
Well, actually, I did want to kind of go off of what you just said about ESPN giving the UFC a big push. And Fox definitely gave the UFC a big push when that deal was in effect, and partially because the UFC was Fox Sports 1. I mean, I know you remember the original, Field TV days, and that was outside of just random indie race car driving. That was the only consistent content on some of those auxiliary Fox channels was the UFC.
Well, remember all the talk shows and commentary shows? They started like with Donovan McNabb.
Oh, that was so trash.
Oh my god.
Oh, that was trash. Oh man, get it up out of there. Like, I mean, that was I don't even want to remember those days. Thanks for reminding me for that dog shit they was putting out, man. They had some horrible shows on Fox Sports 1. The UFC is what built that channel.
Yes.
And so I know ESPN is looking for the UFC to do that with ESPN Plus. But I think because of that, they're gonna give it an even bigger push because this is going to be behind a paywall. And then on top of that, ESPN has this long history of only supporting the sports that they air. There's a reason why that ESPN is consistently the NFL network a lot of times, because Monday Night Football, because they have the rights to that, and that's a huge revenue driver for them. So the UFC being a cash cow there, they've got to push it. And now with Top Rank as well in their fold, like they just have a rich body of combat sports to promote, and ESPN can promote the hell out of a sport if they choose to. You saw how they dropped the NHL essentially when the NHL deal ran out. NHL content damn near disappeared off of ESPN. We saw how they treated mixed martial arts years ago, MMA Live just getting less and less of a prominent spot
at 3 a.m.
Yeah. I mean, it went from consistently at like Fridays at 10 p.m. to then like right after Friday night fights into going to midnight, then to 1, and then 2 in the morning. Then it became an online show. Then it became just a clip of a few segments that were only available online. And they let go of writers like Chuck Mendenhall. They stopped their partnership with Sherdog. So there were a lot of things that ESPN had going for it MMA wise that they choose to abandon because it was a sport that they weren't showing. So now with those full resources,
and
things could
also
happen.
around that time, it may not be exactly concurrently with all those events, but around that same time was when the UFC did move from Spike to Fox. And from my vague remembrance of it, I believe the ESPN offer was extremely low compared to the Fox offer, and there was some hostility, so to speak, between Dana White and ESPN for a time. So I don't know if which one's the chicken, which one's the egg, but there definitely is, I think, a direct correlation between the UFC not getting that ESPN deal going to Fox and ESPN at that same time dropping their MMA content until recently, obviously, with the new ESPN deal. And also, one last point before we get to the fights themselves, let's not forget the ESPN Plus push, like you said, how the UFC content is going to be a major push for ESPN Plus content. This is also the same ESPN that's owned by Disney. Disney Plus is coming out, I believe, this year. I could be wrong about that. So Disney, the parent company, is going to be pushing streaming on all of their subsidiaries, basically, and their own Big Daddy company going forward. And Disney rarely loses. And in the taken to the combat sphere, it's ESPN Plus versus DAZN right now. Just something to think about going forward. Anthony, ready to get to Henry Cejudo demolishing TJ Dillashaw in 30 seconds?
Yes, I'm definitely ready to talk about that fight. Yeah. So why do people cut weight now? Like, why are we doing this? Why are guys killing themselves to maybe be the bigger man? I don't get it. I mean, this is once again the technically smaller guy, the guy who fights in the smaller weight division, destroys the fighter that's from the bigger weight class. So we saw this with Amanda Nunes and Cyborg just a few weeks ago. We saw Conor McGregor destroy Eddie Alvarez. We saw Cormier knock out Stipe in the first round. I mean, if we want to go far enough back, BJ Penn submitting Matt Hughes was another sort of moment, but that kind of a mixed bag of nuts there. We probably shouldn't get into the details of that particular fight. But once again, the smaller guy goes out there, and I don't know, from where I'm sitting, that and actually seeing Cyborg and Nunes maybe 15 feet away from me, seeing that so close, and then watching what Cejudo did, speed kills, man.
Yeah, it was obviously. I wonder if our perception of this fight would be different if we didn't just have a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, potentially, I forget exactly when it was now, 3 weeks ago, the Amanda Nunes huge upset win in basically the same exact fashion over Chris Cyborg. It was from my understanding, from my awareness of just MMA Twitter, the desire for champ fights is now almost dead. And I think in large part due to these two fights back to back that were just extremely short, extremely one-sided in a way. I don't know what to make of that going forward, because obviously the UFC and ESPN deal, I think they're going to really want to push champ fights for some reason, because they just have recently. But the fan reaction to this was a little bit mixed in some ways. I mean, obviously, Henry Cejudo is now, in a lot of people's minds, the savior for an entire division. I think me and you probably both can agree that if the roles were reversed, if TJ Dillashaw beat Henry Cejudo in 30 seconds, we would be hearing in a few days right now about the UFC closing down the flyweight division. I'll be honest. Now, that's completely different. On top of that, I think there is some portion of the fan base that is in agreement with TJ Dillashaw in his criticism of the stoppage. I remember seeing it live. I almost thought it was a little bit early, to be honest. I didn't know if it was the right time to stop that fight. And plus, like you said, the whole weight cutting argument or debate. I think this fight further sides with our argument, but who knows what happened when Cejudo moves up in weight to 135. Will that be a different fight? I don't know. But to the fight itself, Henry Cejudo did exactly what I thought he could do. He timed TJ Dillashaw when he was getting sloppy with his defense with that right hand. And the second he timed him and hurt him, that follow-up was incredible. I mean, Cejudo landed, I think, every shot in that flurry. Absolutely impressive. And I can't wait for the rematch, I'll be honest. I know the rematch is debatable because it's so early, but
they shouldn't do it. Not yet. Not yet. Like there was a clear flyweight contender that established in Joseph Benavidez. Benavidez and Cejudo have a history together already. You know, let Dillashaw go back up to 135 with the laundry list of contenders there. Let him defend his belt. You know, I hate this idea that.
Oh, Anthony, you there? You breaking up? Anthony.
You know, look at what happened with Cody Garbrandt when he fought TJ Dillashaw. You know, to get knocked out in such epic fashion twice in a row, you've essentially like killed his career at bantamweight as long as Dillashaw holds that belt. You know, and Garbrandt is a guy that you can market, a guy that can be a viable star. So you've halted his momentum for the quick payday, and I'm afraid they're going to try to do the same with Dillashaw. I mean, quite frankly, if
Anthony, oh no, Anthony's connection's really bad. This is sad. Anthony.
Yeah, you're cutting out big time.
No, you're cutting out big time. My connection's great. Your connection's not great. Anthony, if you want, drop out and come back in and make sure you're connected via Ethernet, okay? Anthony? Oh, gosh, this is so sad. Well, briefly, I'm going to address some of the points he made about this. Oh, there he is. Anthony? Anthony, is this you? Hello, Anthony? Hello, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Wow, way to go.
So, yeah.
Are you connected via Ethernet?
This computer actually does not have an Ethernet port, but this is like a new laptop. I never have connection problems with it, so.
Except for
this is what I've used ever since I've been on the show a million times with this computer.
Wait, so. I love I don't have connection problems with it. As you literally just added connection.
You mean as your equipment was faulty? Oh yeah, that's what's up. So so you wanna blame the black guy? Oh, I see how you get down, Matt. I see what time it is.
I see what time it is.
You've changed, Matt. Ever since I found out that you were white, you've changed.
I've changed. Oh, that was great. Anyways, back to your point about immediate rematch. I definitely understand your point. That could effectively kill Dillashaw's career at bantamweight in a way. If he were to have two losses back to back to Cejudo. My issue is that how do you circumvent the loss of legitimacy that Dillashaw has, I think, in the public eye, if he were to move back to bantamweight and fight the winner of Assuncao, Moraes, which we're going to talk about later in the show? Will that fight be deemed a legitimate title fight at that division from the fan base with Henry Cejudo out there just beating him by 30 seconds?
No, it won't. It won't. But at the same time, you can't hold up 135 any more than you already have.
Oh, you know what I hear right now? Dana White in the boardroom saying, interim title.
But and you know what? I actually, this is as much as I despise interim titles and as much as I despise the new belt design, because oh goddamn, that is ugly as sin.
Definitely like a Power Ranger belt.
Yeah, definitely. Like for real. Like I'm waiting for Zordon to pop up and strap the belt on somebody at this point. I mean, and Dana White does look kind of like Zordon though, with the bald head and whatnot. So yeah, I can see that.
Oh yeah.
But like, man, I can understand if they brought an interim title out because one, Assuncao is so long overdue for a title shot. Marlon Moraes is a guy who deserves a title shot as well. and he was a champion of another organization coming in to the UFC. So I'm like, all right, I can see that. That doesn't make me cringe like some of the other interim decisions that have been made. But I just don't think we need to throw Dillashaw in there with Cejudo after a 30-second loss. And this whole thing would just undo the goodwill that the 125ers made for themselves, at the event Saturday night. Dustin Ortiz and Joe Benavidez had an incredible.
Oh my God, Anthony, these connection issues. What is up, man?
That they have worth. They have.
Damn.
Pound crown even more. With the amount of fights that they want to put on and how there's such a lack of title fights to have because you only have but so entire division.
There we go. Now you're back.
Oh, I'm back. So I was saying a lot of cool shit too.
You said we heard some of it, but your face was completely frozen. And I want to say like the best freeze frame you could imagine.
Well, it was me making some weird faces, some shit.
Like you remember in the 90s.
It's probably doing it again because you slowing down now.
Oh, no, I can hear you. I got you. Are you there, Anthony? Oh my God, Anthony, this is bad. This is really bad. I definitely apologize to the listeners for the technical issues. Anthony, are you there? Are you back?
I'm here now.
Okay.
You was looking crazy there for a second.
Oh, you were looking like the Brandon Fraser mummy where he's in the sandstorm, right? The mummy face.
Yeah.
That was you.
So you're gonna reference the Mummy, and you give me shit about some of the movies I like. Trash.
Whoa!
Trash.
First off,
The Mummy.
Brandon Fraser's The Mummy is a '90s classic. Hop off! I can't believe you disrespect that, and you're frozen again. That is sad. That is sad, Anthony.
All right, hey, I'm gonna reboot.
That would be a good idea.
Yeah,
that would be a good idea. I'll be here talking about.
I'll be right back
without you. It's okay.
The show gonna get a whole lot less sexy for a few minutes. I'll be right back, motherfuckers.
that is definitely true. I'll briefly. I think I know a lot of what Anthony is going to say about the rematch. I'll address some of his points. I think the legitimacy factor for the bantamweight title is something that a UFC company will be considering or will be thinking about as to how this hurts that brand or that title, and that's a legitimate concern to have. If you're A, the UFC, or B, TJ Dillashaw. If you're Henry Cejudo, you're on cloud 9. Wait, hold on. Unemployed Mara Yamasaki, who references Brandon Fraser? Brandon Fraser's the GOAT. Back off.
I want smoke.
Just saying. Digressing. But Henry Cejudo, he's at a plateau right now. I don't think anyone... Plateau is probably the wrong phrase to use. He's at a point right now in his career I don't think anyone really foresaw. I mean, it wasn't 12 months ago where we were all thinking, oh, Demetrius Johnson's probably going to beat him again, and they might, whatever's going to happen with the flyweight division. Maybe Johnson's going to move up to fight Dillashaw or Garbrandt or Cruz, and that was kind of it. Now Cejudo is just beating Demetrius Johnson via controversial decision, and now beat the bantamweight champion, who we all wanted Johnson to fight. And he beat him in 30 seconds by knockout. That is absolutely insane. You add in the Hispanic demographic he can tie into, he can tap into. You add in the Olympic gold medal. The guy is arguably like a star that just landed in the UFC's lap, and they weren't even asking for it, and they're kind of upset about it, which is the crazy part. I mean, as the thumbnail states, Dana White doesn't look too happy, even though I will admit that is the picture from a while ago. But anyways, digressing. He didn't look too happy in the cage post-fight. But regardless, Henry Cejudo is somebody the UFC can really push. And if they decide to keep the flyweight, keep it around, obviously have the Cejudo-Benavidez 2 fight, which I think they should make, they could do a lot, like I said, with Henry Cejudo. With TJ Dillashaw, I don't know what they do. I think there is some question mark about how to handle his career going forward. Is it the best thing for him to sort of get that rematch with Cejudo, get that win back, and then push off the trilogy fight for a later time when it can marinate? Or, like Anthony says, is it better for him to fight the winner of Assuncao Moraes, who fights this weekend, which we'll talk about later, and just move on in a sense and fight Cejudo down the line? I don't know yet. I'll be honest about which route, if I'm the UFC, which route I would want to do. For all the hate I do give instant rematches for fights like this one kind of feels like it's needed. I think the weight cut of TJ Dillashaw is a factor as to how quick he was dealt with. And it's not to discredit Cejudo's win. I think Cejudo had the power, the timing, and the boxing ability to do that to Dillashaw. But I also think he would have recovered a little bit faster and a little bit better if he didn't have that monster weight cut. And I feel like that's like based in every medical science you can think of. Moving on, I do see Imran Masaki saying, will you cover Greg Hardy later? I really don't have much to say about Greg Hardy getting a DQ loss against Alan Crowder via illegal knee in the second round. I don't care. I don't care about Greg Hardy. He's 2-1 now in his career. He shouldn't be a co-main event on a UFC card or even on a UFC card to begin with. Honestly, he doesn't deserve to be here. Just from a meritocracy standpoint, he does not deserve this spot. But he was rewarded it because why? It's Greg Hardy. It's a name that translates to the casual sporting audience. And how you doing? You back?
Yeah, I'm back. Apparently my computer needed an update, so that happened real quick. Here I am.
Well, first off, I gotta say this. For updates, that was fucking quick. Like, usually computer updates are a pain in the ass, so.
Yeah, that's why I delayed it for so long, and now it just kind of caught up to me.
Oh, that does happen. That can affect a computer when you don't update it. To sort of recap you on what I was saying, I'm conflicted about if I'm the UFC, if I put the UFC hat on, I'm conflicted about what I do with TJ Dillashaw next. Do I do the route you recommend, which is fight the winner of Assuncao Moraes next, just get him back on that path and fight Cejudo later? Or do you try to get him to that Cejudo fight immediately to add or bring back his legitimacy? And if you're the UFC, I don't know which route I would take, to be honest.
Well, I mean, the route that they've taken time after time is the immediate.
I'll agree with you. As a fan, I would rather do your route, to be honest. But if I'm the UFC, I might do the one like you're about to say they do all the time.
Yeah, I mean, think about the Kane JDS trilogy. Like, that was so rushed that you really didn't have any build up between the second and the third fight. So that third fight just it felt really empty almost. You know, it didn't feel like a complete trilogy. And when we think back on it now, it wasn't nearly as big as it could have been. You know, pulling the trigger on the instant rematch is just not always going to be the right move. It was the right move for Conor and Nate Diaz because those were odd circumstances. But aside from the special case, that normally isn't what should happen unless you have a very close controversial decision. Like, for instance, and how ironic is it that they're talking about rematching Dillashaw and Cejudo. They're talking about rematching them, but DJ is now in one championship after the most razor thin of wins against Cejudo. There's no logic to it.
Are you surprised? Like,
no, not surprised one bit. But there's literally no logic to it. There's not like a shred of logic to it. But even if you're looking at this from a business standpoint, build it up and make it bigger. You know, it's very difficult to sell the casual fan on a rematch between those two when the first one ended in 32 seconds. Like, do you think the casual fan, that one of the 500,000 people that suddenly subscribed to ESPN Plus and just checked it out of curiosity, do you think they give a shit about 10-pound difference between 125 and 135? Do they think that's going to make the slightest bit of a difference when you explain to them what's going on in that fight?
Casuals, no, of course not. I mean, the casuals are like low IQ voters, you know.
Exactly.
Or low info voters, I should say, not low IQ, low info, like low.
About the same most of the time. I'll say this. So us hardcores, I think that's a legitimate factor. Like, did the weight cut affect Dillashaw's recovery ability?
when he was hurt. I think there is at least some argument could be made just from a medical perspective, from a scientific perspective, on how, that extra 10 pounds probably affected him. And the easy thing to do is just show pictures of him. The guy looked like fucking Skeletor in there. And even on fight night, I would say he still looked thinner than usual compared to bantamweight, even though he obviously rebounded in weight probably by 20, 30 pounds. That weight cut affected him. He looked like a victim of some criminal human violation in some third world country right now. Honestly, it was horrifying to watch that guy go through that.
His face looks like Christian Bale in The Machinist.
Yes. Casuals don't give a shit about that. Us hardcores, I think we do a little bit. I'll be honest.
No, we definitely do. We, as in yourself and myself, yes, we understand that. We get that, and we can assess what a rematch would look like at 135 with him based on that factor. But the casual fan isn't going to respond to that. The casual fan will respond to a highlight reel showing Dillashaw head kicking Marlon Moraes or something, or him submitting Assuncao, and then Cejudo buzzsawing through Benavidez. They'll respond to that, and that will add a little more gravity to it. The casual fan does not know what they're talking about. When I can if I could communicate to you how many people tried to convince me that Betch Correia had a chance against Ronda Rousey because she's undefeated, and they saw that one clip of her piecing up Shayna Baszler against the cage, and they thought, oh man, this is it. Ronda's met her match. The casual fan does not know what they're looking at most of the time. So we can't, within our bubble, it's very difficult for us to say to say what makes sense to us, because we have a lot more education behind what we're saying. We have a lot more context behind what we're saying. The casual fan just turns it on and they see people hitting each other.
Agreed. Speaking of turning on and seeing people hit each other, I briefly talked about the co-main event. Greg Hardy getting the DQ loss against Alan Crowder. I basically said I could give two shits about it. Greg Hardy does not deserve to be in the UFC. He's 2-1, let alone be a co-main event. I know that you wrote about it in your article, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly, on Sherdar.com. Go check it out. That was in your ugly section. So I read that. I kind of know what your opinions about the matter are, but I know that people don't. So,
just go ahead and expand upon that.
Yeah, because again, I don't care. I don't care about Greg Hardy. He shouldn't be here. I'm not going to talk about him.
Yeah, I'm not as emotional about the Greg Hardy thing as a lot of my colleagues are. And I've definitely had some very interesting conversations with some of my colleagues at events or, via text message or WhatsApp or whatever about man, does Greg Hardy even deserve to be here? And I'm of the school thing. No, he doesn't deserve to be here. Not necessarily because of his past, but more so because of his experience level, because he has not proven himself to be a UFC caliber fighter. His past, definitely ugly as hell. It's definitely not something that should be condoned in any matter. And quite frankly, I don't think he hasn't shown to be remorseful in any way or apologetic or anything of that sort about that. But at the same time, it's hard for me to point the finger at him in particular when you have a promoter willing to put him on and make a lot of money off of his name. Well, when you have a roster filled with people who've done very similar things that are promoted, at that. Well,
it's quite simple, Anthony. Look at the biggest combat sports star, arguably ever, Floyd Mayweather, a convicted domestic violence abuser. So there is no line. That's why I'm done arguing from that standpoint, from that angle, from a humanity standpoint. Hey, this guy probably shouldn't be given this opportunity due to his past life. Even though I think that argument has merit to it, I think just for the sake of our industry and culture of this industry, that's pushing a fucking 300-pound boulder uphill. There's no point in that.
Combat sports will fall apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Instantly.
And so I understand that. However, from just a pure ability standpoint, a pure meritocracy standpoint, putting all the personal shit aside, like you said, he doesn't deserve to be here. He was 2-0 heading into this fight. Now he's 2-1. And again, he wasn't even just put on the prelims. He was
on the co-main
event on the first ESPN card, let alone the fact that Rachel Ostovich is on the card. They thought, let's roll the dice on a 2-0 guy as a co-main event for opening ESPN card.
You know, it's like you can't, like, I'm not understanding why you put people who don't belong in this spot. They haven't proven themselves as capable, well-rounded mixed martial artists. They haven't proven themselves as martial artists. Or, they haven't proven themselves to be worthy of the opportunity to fight in the world leading organization of mixed martial arts. However, you put them in a prominent spot, and you're surprised when bad things happen. Like, when you put bad fighters, you put fighters who aren't good in these spotlights, don't expect good things to happen. You know, like that quite frankly looked a lot like a lot of the amateur shows that I've gone to or coached at or whatever. It looked just like that. It looked, and it's like there's nothing sloppier and, you know, more ludicrous to watch a lot of times than bad heavyweight fights.
And this was like Midwestern heavyweight fights. Like this
this was like barnyard amateur MMA sort of thing. This was like the first days of Monty Cox. This wasn't this was not high level mixed martial arts at all.
Somewhere TJ DeSantis is looking at this like, oh, good times, memories.
Yeah, TJ is right now. He is a happy man right now.
This reminds me of home. I love this fight. You know?
Yeah, he's getting all nostalgic. I can see this one tear drop out of his eyes. And
the Midwest. I will say this, to Alan Crowder's credit, he was piecing up Greg Hardy in that second round, and it's clear that both guys are not at this level. And I don't want to see. I don't care. I don't.
Yeah,
care.
And you know what? One thing too, man. Like this. I don't know. I've seen all these emotional takes one way or the other, and I quite frankly, I had myself a little moment on Twitter after that fight. It was like, why are we surprised that this happened?
I saw that. That was funny.
Like, why? Like, how is this shocking at all? A guy who apparently beat up his girlfriend. He got mad, beat up his girlfriend, and threw her on a couch that was piled with guns. Like, are you surprised that he lost his temper when the fight wasn't going his way and he did something illegal? The idea that this has something to do with him being inexperienced as far as the blow itself, his inexperience showed in how bad of a fight it was, but the actual illegal blow that disqualified him, that had nothing to do with inexperience. Zero, zilch. Please explain to me what rule set that he's fought under that is acceptable under. Now, even with this so-called unified rule system that we have in North America, where it's broken up into 3 different segments, and you gotta the definition of a ground opponent is different based on which state you're in. Even under every iteration of those rules, that blow is illegal. So I just wonder, where did you get this experience under Japanese rules to where oh, I forgot where I was? Like, no, that's not what happened.
The best is like, if you're out there listening, don't stop listening to the show. Do it after the show. But go back and actually watch this fight and watch that DQ. And when he gets pushed off by the ref and he looks up, he has the look of pure like, oh shit. Like,
he's like, oops, I did it again.
Yeah, like, oh damn it. Like, you can tell like he's like, oh shit, damn it, I'm fucked. And it's hilarious to me. And
yeah, like this reminded me a lot of like Andrew Galata in his worst days, where it's just like, dude, there's no way we can defend this. Like, there's literally no way that you can say that this was, oops, it was an accident. I'm sorry, I don't care. And ironically too, I will give him credit for saying for being apologetic at the post-fight presser and owning up to it. Now, he did say it was because of inexperience. I'm not buying that, but he did say, hey, it's 100% my fault. I did it. I take full responsibility. Ironically,
well, imagine
it's the same apologies people wanted to hear about the real bad shit he's done.
Well, I mean, why is he gonna go up there and say like, "Oh, it wasn't me"?
Yeah, like, I mean, shit, we got you on camera, bro.
Yeah. Millions of Americans saw you on camera. Like, yeah, sorry.
It's like the only people that didn't see it are the ones who had problems with the stream at the time. That's it.
Yeah.
So,
oh my god, my stream cut out. It was so bad. It was only bad for one time, but it cut out for like a good 10, 15 minutes. I missed most of the Joseph Benavidez Dustin Ortiz fight live because of that. I was kind of really heated about it.
And that was a very good fight too. So
yes,
yeah,
we're gonna get to it.
During that fight, actually, my screen went from HD to 8-bit Nintendo.
Ooh, I like that. The 8-bit Nintendo is good.
Yeah, it was like a lot of pixels doing a lot of spinning shit. So I couldn't quite tell what was going on for a little bit there.
Gregor Gillespie beating Yancy Medeiros via TKO. Gillespie is just one of those guys that he's sort of a throwback, like 2008, 2010 wrestler where he's just so relentless with the takedowns. He's so active. I obviously heard a lot of comparisons to Frankie Edgar, mainly in part due to both guys being from generally the same area of the world, and both guys being sort of the traditional, like, really talented boxers, but, really volume wrestlers and ground and pound guys. And again, Yancy Medeiros is probably the best win on his resume at this point. I'm excited to see what Gillespie does next. What was your sort of take on this fight and Yancy Medeiros? I think this was his first fight back at lightweight. I
believe so
as well.
Yeah.
What was your take on this fight?
The fight kind of went exactly the way I thought it was going to go. I mean, Gregor Gillespie has proven himself to be an extremely dominating wrestler. I know he's, the Frankie Edgar comparison has been drawn. I've definitely heard that, but I think of him more as like a more violent version of Jacob Volkman. Yeah, somebody who can swarm you with the wrestling, but he's going to beat you up really badly in the process. And that's, and maybe I think he's much more like Khabib Nurmagomedov than Frankie Edgar in that sense, where he's gonna get on top of you and he's gonna grind you out, but he's also gonna lay a lot of damage in the process. It's not gonna be, sort of like the classic John Fitch approach to just control positioning and get a decision that way. He's gonna beat you. If you leave something out there, he's gonna rip it off, and maybe the ref will save you, maybe not. But Gregor Gillespie, man, he's a guy to watch for, man. That guy's going to be a big problem for the lightweight division.
And plus, it being the lightweight division, like he instantly is now in with the crop of names in that top 15 probably now that like all of those matchups I like. And plus, I mean, I like the Khabib comparison a little bit more than Jacob Volkman, mainly due to I think Gillespie has a better boxing base than Volkman ever did. Obviously, I think it's much more like Khabib. Just the way he pops up a guard. Like, it's very fundamental and very technical. You can tell that he's drilled a lot of boxing pad work and mitt work. You can just tell by it. But like you said, I mean, upwards and onwards for this guy. Can't wait to see what's next for him. Joseph Benavidez versus Dustin Ortiz. A fight that was, I thought, really competitive. One that when I saw it half live, because I missed half of the fight, I didn't really know who won it. I was kind of half watching, I'll be honest. I was watching the boxing card at the same time. But I watched it several times now, and it's just a fantastic back and forth affair. I thought Dustin Ortiz narrowly lost that fight. Like he barely lost the first round, I think. I think he was on the way to winning it until he got dropped by that right hand, honestly, in the last minute of that round. I thought Dustin Ortiz was putting in the better work, was more active, was landing better takedowns, just a little bit more offensive in that first round. But again, he got knocked down in the last minute. I think Benavidez stole that round slightly. The second round, I think Ortiz was, again, worked the same way in the first half of that first round without getting knocked down. But in the third round, I thought Joseph Benavidez was able to avoid a lot of... He basically just avoid being on his back most of the time. Whenever he did get taken down, he was able to quickly scramble and get on top. He was obviously winning the striking exchanges in that third round. But it was a tight, close fight. It was fantastic grappling exchanges between them. And I want to say Dustin Ortiz, I know that this is, I think, another loss against Joseph Benavidez, but I think he's improving. Like, I think this was a very good showing for Dustin Ortiz, even in a losing affair. And to the, talk about flyweight still having some life in it, this fight was obviously another indicator of that. Your thoughts on Joseph Benavidez most likely getting a title shot against Henry Cejudo next and getting a hard-earned victory over Dustin Ortiz?
I'm definitely happy to see Joseph Benavidez potentially get another shot at a UFC belt. And this is Benavidez. A lot of people don't remember this because maybe they weren't, watching the WEC. But Joseph Benavidez was like the second best bantamweight for a very long time. he's only been beaten by just a handful of guys that are extraordinarily elite. Dominic Cruz, Demetrius Johnson, Sergio Pettis in a very close fight, and that's probably
that was slightly controversial as well.
Yeah, that was probably the least the least notable of his losses. But I mean, Benavidez has been putting in work for so long, and he's been toiling away and handling every task that's been put up in front of him. It's good to see him get a win on such a big stage, man, and hopefully get a title shot. I mean, that Cejudo fight, I mean, you tell me you don't want to see Joseph Benavidez versus Henry Cejudo too.
Well, that's another fight. That's another fight that was controversial at the time. I remember watching it and going like, "Ooh, that's a close one." Maybe Henry,
because Cejudo could have won that if he didn't get a point deducted. I mean, that was a very tightly contested fight, and Cejudo has gotten so much better since then. But he still got that loss against Benavidez, and then Benavidez, you could throw him in against TJ Dillashaw as well. They have a history, and you see the relationship that they've had. I talked to Benavidez at 227. I ran into him somewhere in downtown LA and got a quick interview with him, and he's talking about his friendship with Dillashaw. They're close friends. In fact, I was standing there with him, and Dillashaw's parents happened to walk up the street, and they exchanged words, and they were joking around with each other. And he was obviously very close to him and his family, and now that relationship is fractured as a result of Dillashaw's comments about the flyweight division. So there are so many storylines that can emerge from this, but all of them really involve not killing the damn division. Keep the division alive. There's so much fertile ground there. I mean, even if Demetrius Johnson couldn't be a pay-per-view star, even if, you still need the bodies. You still need this division to fill out a card. They were already the least populated male division in the UFC, and now with the cuts that they made in November and December, even less so. Man, call those guys back. Get this division running. Like, we need the bodies, and they consistently put on exciting fights. So what if they can't main event a pay-per-view? So what? We still need fights.
Especially moving into the streaming era. Like, you really don't need pay-per-views, draws like you used to in the old paradigm of combat sports. And I agree with basically every point you made. For the sake of time, let's move on. Paige Van Zandt versus Rachel Ostovich. A fight that, up until that submission, Rachel Ostovich was highly impressive to me. Paige Van Zandt looked like she had, at first, no answers on her back against Rachel Ostovich. I think Rachel understood that she was naturally the bigger opponent in there. And I think if she got on top, she understood that she could win the fight, and she clearly was winning. And on top of that, I think she was even winning the striking exchanges in the first round and a half or so. She was able to catch Paige Van Zandt in boxing exchanges, and that shocked me. I always thought Rachel Ostovich was a little bit of the slower athlete of the two, definitely the less technical of the two. But she was winning that fight until the last 20 seconds of that scramble, and then Paige Van Zandt caught that arm, and she basically broke it, dislocated it, hyperextended the arm, and won the fight off of her own. She herself, I think, had a broken arm surgery recently as well that she had a long layoff for. Paige Van Zandt now back in the win column, as she needed. Really tough loss for Rachel Ostovich, but definitely enough of a performance where, even though her record doesn't show it, she probably belongs in the UFC level, to be quite honest. And I really hope the UFC gives her another opportunity, and also one that is less publicized, so to speak. I think she'll do better without all the media pressure, without all of just the life circumstances surrounding her right now, obviously with her domestic violence situation going on with her the boyfriend or husband. But fantastic performance from both of them. Fantastic sort of out-of-nowhere submission for Paige Van Zandt. She needed that. She needed this win. And even though in a losing affair, Rachel Ostovich looked, I think, better than ever, and clearly showed with some more time and probably a better training camp with less chaos, she's a real force in this division if, again, she's afforded that time and actually given a proper build-up and sort of matchmaking. Thoughts on this fight, Anthony?
This fight was much better than it was supposed to be. Like, and I didn't, and I don't want to make it sound like I thought this fight was going to be bad. When this matchup was first announced, I thought, oh, that might be a lot of fun. I thought that could be a really good fight stylistically. But when you look at it on paper, of course, the long running joke that Paige VanZant is grossly overrated and she's been hyped up and, behind the marketing machine. And that's kind of the common wisdom. But I disagree with a lot of that. She may have been pushed in some spots where she didn't necessarily belong. She hadn't, like, for instance, the fight against Rose Namajunas was definitely not the best look for her as far as, building her career up properly. But she's proven herself in that fight and several others to be extraordinarily tough, to have a lot of good skill, a complete, just reckless abandon when it comes to her own self-preservation, and just wants to go out there and fight and do a good job. And Rachel Ostovich came into this fight with a 500 record. So that should not have been nearly as good as it was, but the scrambles were incredible. Technically, it was a beautiful fight to watch, and that submission was, I was screaming at the TV. I just did not see where the tap came from, because it looked like that Ostovich had gotten out of the submission, but just little minor adjustments, caused her to tap. I love that fight.
I thought, I'll be honest, when I saw the submission, I could kind of tell the arm was either broken or bending the wrong way, right? So I could tell. Well, I should say I thought that was the reason. I thought the ref maybe heard Rachel scream or something like that. I thought that was sort of the reason why it was stopped. I didn't think she tapped at all. And then obviously they got the angle from down low where you could see the tap. And to your point about Paige VanZant, sort of connecting to what we're talking about, Joseph Benavidez, she's only really lost the best. Take aside the Jessica Rose Clark loss, which was deflating in a way. Michelle Watterson, one of the best atomweight female fighters of all time. Rose Namajunas, the current strawweight champion. Tisha Torres, the perennial top 5 contender of strawweight. Those are
a horrible style matchup for her as well.
Awful. And she has wins against Kaylin Curran, Felice Herring, and that win, I think, with time looks better and better. Beck Rawlings, maybe not the greatest win in hindsight, but she has wins over top 15 competition, and she's only lost to the top 5, really. And again, I think, to your point, I thought this fight was going to be a little bit one-sided when it was first announced. I thought Paige VanZant was just going to be too much from what I perceived, a slower fight on Rachel Ostovich, who didn't have the technical acumen to really contend with the volume and the pressure of Paige VanZant, but I was completely wrong about that. And I like that I was wrong. I like that it was a surprising fight. Anything else on this fight, Ant?
I just how interesting is it that we see this fight and Rachel makes a walk with her family in her corner, and it's this big emotional moment, and Megan O'Leary gives her 2 cents about how she's such a courageous woman, and she's just a brave fighter, and all things rightfully done. Like Rachel Ostovich deserves all the credit in the world for being able to make that walk, win or lose, Saturday night. But then to go from that to now convicted domestic abuser Greg Hardy in the co-main event spot, like, whoa, man, do better.
So tone deaf.
do better, please.
This is the UFC we're talking about, and that's not surprising at all, which is very sad. And this is our careers.
Yeah, this is what we choose to do.
Anyways, Glover Teixeira versus Carl Robinson. A fight that Glover Teixeira saved. Like, he was significantly hurt. Those elbows to the temple against the cage, I thought Glover Teixeira was out. Roberson, who I think is a Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series alumni, he looked impressive. Like, honestly, like in the flurry and the follow-up, like he was landing shots. Glover Teixeira just had some like Wolverine-like moment with some adamantium in his head, because somehow he was able to survive that onslaught. And the second he got the takedown, it was a microsecond full mount. 30 seconds, maybe 20 seconds later, arm triangle. And it was a wrap. I thought that was a beautiful one-fight affair, back and forth, comeback submission win for Glover Teixeira to keep him at the top of the light heavyweight division. And even in a losing affair for Carl Roberson, who's still obviously extremely inexperienced, a guy that came in on late notice. I think he came in for Island Chutaleba. And Roberson looked impressive, like I said. Like, I want to see him again. And hopefully he gets a full training camp and gets some wrestling and grappling training in there. That's clearly the only hole in his game. Striking, he looked fantastic. Thoughts on Glover Teixeira arguably saving his place in the top of the light heavyweight division, Anthony?
Yeah, he definitely did. I mean, I thought he was out. Yeah. When his body started going limp after like the fourth elbow, I thought, oh, this is a wrap. And also it shows you how scary good Glover Teixeira is on the ground. He gets all this credit, and rightfully so, for being, such a heavy hitter and being sharp with his punches. But man, if that guy is on the ground with you, you are having a horrible, horrible day. I mean, he went through his guard like a buzzsaw. It was literally no chance for Roberson to have any sort of transition to get better position or anything. It just happened like that. And then also how he goes for that arm triangle choke. And when it doesn't fall the first time, he wears away at him just a little bit more. But keeping that same setup just halfway there, and then once he breaks him a little bit further, he goes for that submission. I mean, that was the combination of incredible technical skill and great veteran savvy, along with having a hard fucking head, man.
Yeah,
wow. Like, I almost got knocked out watching it.
Yeah, speaking of almost getting knocked out watching it, Alexander Hernandez getting knocked out viciously on the main event, air quotes, of the UFC prelims on ESPN versus Donald Cerrone. Man, old man Cerrone, give it up, man. Honestly, like Dad Cerrone, he's a bad motherfucker, man. I'll be honest. His 2 fights since being a dad, he's looked impressive. I don't know if we're seeing the new chapter of Cowboy's career where he gets another 3, 4, 5 years of action due to it. He gets some new life in him. I don't know.
Or is Dad Cerrone the new motivated BJ Penn?
Oh my God. Yes. Yes, it is. I love it.
The new C-level Kane. Like what what is Dad Cerrone is no joke.
But the best part is, like, we didn't realize how good C-level Kane was until we didn't have C-level Kane, right?
Right. Until we had altitude Kane. It just
altitude Kane.
It just wasn't the same.
But we've had non-Dad Cerrone for nearly 40 plus fights, and now we have Dad Cerrone, so we're living in it. We're experiencing it live. It's like the Machida era all over again, folks. Get hyped. But I'll be honest, that first 30 seconds of the fight where Hernandez landed that really hard combination, like all the shots landed, I was thinking, oh shit, this isn't going to be good. Like Cerrone with the weight cut, I'm concerned. But then Cerrone just turned it around like instantly, landed combination after combination, always knew when to throw the right shot, and it was always accurate. And Hernandez, to his credit, was able to take a lot of the punishment for a very long time until the finish. But you could tell from very early in that fight, maybe about a minute or two in, Cerrone had him hurt, and Hernandez was in survival mode, and he never really got out of that. Yeah. Credit to Cerrone because he needed this win, I think, in some ways. Moving back to lightweight, facing a 25, 26-year-old. He could have easily lost, and I think a lot of question marks would have been about him. And Alexander Hernandez would have been catapulted to a Darren Till-like position. He would have been promoted heavily. But now we have Donald Cerrone back in contention, possibly getting a Conor McGregor fight. Just sort of great things for Cowboy, who is probably a top 5 fan favorite of all time. And again, this is one of those fights that showed it. Congrats to him. Fantastic showing. And again, that mixture of really underrated wrestling and grappling with fantastic, accurate, traditional kickboxing, it's still deadly. Like, the old school still works sometimes. So shout out to Cerrone. Your thoughts on the fight, Anthony?
One thing that I was very impressed with, it's and this is so rare for a fighter so late in their career. Cerrone is getting better in a lot of ways, man. One of the big flaws, I mean, as celebrated of a striker as he is, one of his biggest flaws was always just staying in boxing range. And that was always kind of like the way to stifle him. You know, we saw Nate Diaz do that so effectively. And he was able to avoid a lot of the kicks and just stay in that punch range and keep Cerrone at the end of his arms. And he largely boxed with Hernandez and beat him there. And that's something that the non-fatherhood Cerrone probably wouldn't have been able to pull off. You know, we saw Edson Barboza like really outbox him until Cerrone landed that hard jab to set up a submission. And besides that, I mean, Cerrone was always kind of vulnerable with some of those punches. So for him to win this fight really at the start of it with his boxing, I think is really, really saying something. I really hope that Conor McGregor fight happens. I think that's probably the best fight for both of them at their stages of their career. I think that's a good one for everyone involved.
Absolutely agree. Moving on, Joanne Calderwood defeating Ariana Lipski via a very clear, unanimous decision win where I think Calderwood's experience, her wrestling, her just understanding of like fighting, right? Her full understanding of the fight game obviously came into play. Ariana Lipski, I think, if this was just a stand-up fight, would have beat Calderwood 10 out of 10 times. But the fact that Calderwood knew how to mix it up in the clinch better, knew how to mix it up on the ground better, knew when to do those things at the right times, and kept the pace high, she really, I think, took Lipski, the UFC newcomer, out of her element and showed that even though Jessica Ai is probably getting the title shot versus Valentina Shevchenko first, Calderwood's probably the deserving #1 contender. And honestly, I doubted her in this fight. I thought Lipski would win it. I've always doubted Calderwood to get over that hump. She always seemed like that sort of fighter in that way. To fail at that big time, the contender fight, sort of like Michael Bisping, always losing the #1 contender fight. But this was arguably that, and she won it, and credit to her. I still think she's probably food for Shevchenko, just to be honest. But I would love to see a Joanne Calderwood, Valentina Shevchenko fight, maybe even in Europe. Put that somewhere where you can get some actual fans of those two fighters. Put it in the O2 with a good co-main. In a perfect world, I know it doesn't happen because of just the scheduling. It would be awesome if we had Calderwood versus Shevchenko and the co-main be the Darren Till Jorge Masvidal fight, and put that in the O2, and I think that would do awesome. But hey, I'm not working the UFC, and they have some guy from a Hollywood agency working that stuff. Not my anyways. Whatever. But Calderwood, impressive, great wrestling performance, and one that I think we always forget that she has that in her tool belt. Just sort of like Don Cerrone in that way, that she has other facets to her game. Your thoughts on this fight, Anthony?
I think you pretty much said it all, man. Calderwood definitely deserves to be in title consideration at this point. She's earned her spot. I favorite Lipski as well. And, once again, the savvy vets prove us wrong. This was a night about veterans, man, doing what they do. So, Calderwood versus Shevchenko, or her just being an alternate to what looks like Jessica Ai getting a title shot sounds good to me. I'm for it.
Agreed. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to quickly run through the rest of the prelims. Alonzo Mainfield beating Vinicius Morea via TKO in the first round. Corey Sandhagen defeating Mario Butasti via submission. Batista. Oh man, my eyesight's getting bad. I'm definitely gonna need glasses in like a year or two. It's gonna be awful. It's gonna be awful. Sandhagen definitely being a now contender at bantamweight. Can't wait to see what's next for him. I think he's supposed to fight John Lineker on this card.
Lineker got injured last minute.
Yeah, I would love to see them run that back. I'll be honest. Dennis Bermudez versus Tay Edwards. Dennis Bermudez is clearly winning and also retiring. I just gotta say, shout out to Dennis Bermudez, man. One of the most underrated all-action fighters of the last decade, I would say. His fight with
Matt Grice.
Matt Grice, who obviously Matt Grice had a car accident, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he had, I think, like really bad, not brain damage, but basically, I forget the exact specifics of the story. But look into that.
They had to remove part of his skull, and
but that was just a Crazy fight, crazy after story with Matt Grice. Go check that out if you haven't yet, because it's a piece of MMA history that could definitely get forgotten that shouldn't. Nes Bermudez, shout out to him. Jeff Neal defeating Bilal Muhammad. Jeff Neal, God.
Oh, man, Jeff Neal. Jeez.
Man, when he defeated, what was his last fight? Camacho, Frank Camacho?
Yeah, let me look up the.
I think it's Frank Camacho. That was a sort of breakout performance for me, for Jeff Neal. Seeing him have that sort of shot selection, accuracy, power, composure, all at a very, young experience level, made me really excited to see what's next for Jeff Neal. Feeding a guy like Bilal Muhammad, who's been around the block for a while now, it seems, I think establishes Jeff Neal as a legit face. Not face, but a relevant player at welterweight in that top 20 range. I can't wait to see what's next for Jeff Neal. Absolutely impressive, dominant performance, and his boxing. God, I just want to see him box 24/7. Like I want to go.
Yeah,
I want to go see this guy spar like some high level boxers because he is legitimately talented when it comes to those hands.
And the scariest thing about him too, man. When he fought Frank Camacho, he was a server at a steakhouse. I think
still
in
is.
Texas. He's still. I thought he because he won the. Didn't he win the performance bonus?
Mm-hmm.
I thought he quit after he won the performance bonus. Oh man, this dude is still serving tables.
Yes,
man, you better tip that man. He'll fuck you up. you better tip that man. Shit, man. Yes. I tell you, you better. If that steak is overcooked, eat it anyway. If the mashed potatoes are cold, eat it anyway. If you don't like the service, tip him 25-30% anyway.
Because he will piece you up.
Yeah, man, just live to see tomorrow, man. Fuck all that.
Man, I can't wait to see the next performance from Jeff Neal. I did not see the chance. I'm not even trying to
recontour and
yeah, I don't care. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it was a finish, so that was cool.
Man, that's the one thing about this era. I'm noticing that there's so many more fights now where I'm just like,
Yeah.
It's
so many fights now. Like I can't remember all these people's names. I really can't. Like I do this for a living, and I don't know who these people are half the time.
Oh, it's hard.
The funniest times to me have always been like whenever I would do the old roundtables, for Sure Dog and now for TJ DeSantis's Patreon channel. Whenever I've been on the roundtable. When we're going through the preliminary card, I'm like, I don't remember any of these names. And I start watching some of their fights. I'm like, oh, yeah, I remember this fight.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. And then it all comes back to me.
Yep, definitely. I'm definitely more of a faces guy than a names guy. Like, it's very hard for me to remember people's names, how to pronounce it, how it's spelled. But I can remember your face out of a crowd easily. Easily. But digressing, last point I'm going to say about this card, shout out to Cejudo sending his shot to Nikki Bella.
Looks like he scored on that shot,
Looks like
too.
he scored on that, man. So salute, man. Salute.
That's what's up.
That's what's up, man. A little 5'4" guy, 125 pounds, shooting a shot. Salute to him, man.
Yeah, see, what Cejudo got to do, 5'4", but he got to tell the ladies I'm taller on my back. Let them know what time it is.
Anyways, moving on. UFC Fortaleza. I'm assuming that's what they're going to call it. I don't know, but that's usually how they do it now instead of the numbered events, thank God. Have you noticed that they've slowly moved away from like UFC on ESPN 33?
Yeah,
even though they do that still, have you noticed that like all the hashtags now are just the UFC and the city?
You know what? I think I thought that was more the fans doing that, and definitely for me, it was just easier to keep up on my part because this one that just passed was I think it was UFC Fight Night 143. But
UFC Brooklyn.
The only reason why I remember that is because I saw that title as I was, prepping for the last podcast I did with Jason Burgos. So whatever. It's just easier to remember the city, And even that sometimes it's like, what city are they in now? Because they jump around the world so much, man. I don't know, man. When where were they in Russia? Was that with who's the main event? Mark Hunt and Olenek.
Wasn't that Moscow?
That was Moscow?
I don't know.
I don't know. Whatever. See, exactly. This is my point.
I'll be honest. I barely remember that event. And I only remember Oleinik in the submission. Like, that's all I remember of that fight.
I just remember knowing KJ Cajun Johnson was going to get cut after he lost that very close decision.
That's right.
Project Spearhead shoutouts. All right.
When you said KJ, I was like, KJ Noons? Was he on the card? Throwback. But digressing, UFC Fortaleza, Rafael Assuncao versus Marlon Moraes 2, rematching after a controversial split decision, I want to say maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago. A fight that I don't know if I really wanted the rematch right now. I don't hate it. I think it's a good Brazilian versus Brazilian main event. The co-main, obviously, I think could have been a better main event, but Jose Aldo didn't want to be main event. Completely understand, respect that. This being 5 rounds, I wonder who that's going to hurt more in this fight. I felt like Assuncao was doing better as the fight went on. But in a 5-round affair, we've seen Moraes be absolutely destructive in that, in a methodical way in World Series of Fighting back in the day, which is now PFL. So I don't know who this favors. I think Assuncao is probably still the favorite in my eyes. I think whatever Moraes can do, I think Assuncao can match that, whether it's striking, whether it's grappling, whether it's wrestling. And Assuncao is still far and away the more experienced player of the two, I would say, even though Moraes has done quite well since that loss. I mean, his knockout versus Jimmy Rivera was quite impressive. That was, like a 30-second knockout.
Right, yeah. Knocked out Aljamain Sterling as well. So.
Yes. But I think Assuncao is just... Maybe it's a factor of also me like wanting him to win. I want Assuncao to win this fight. I want him to get that title shot because he's never had a single title shot. But I also know for the division, it would be better if Moraes won this fight, just being completely honest.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely more that's the sexier name. That's the one who's stylistically is going to probably be easier to sell. But Assuncao is one of those guys who can just shut you down, and I think that's what makes him so dangerous. It's not that, granted, he's skilled in many areas, but
talented boxer, talented grappler,
exactly. But he's so good at just stopping you doing what you're best at. Mm-hmm. I think that's his biggest strength. So, quite honestly, I want to lean toward Assuncao winning this one again. I think that, of course, the 5-round factor is going to play a part, but also it's been a while since Moraes has trained for a 5-rounder. You know, it's been what, 2-3 years at least,
probably around that, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's maybe the experience of what it feels like being in those championship rounds, but as far as his body necessarily being more ready for it, I don't think that's going to play much of a factor. And this is obviously, in my opinion, this is busy work. This is something to keep them from complaining about not fighting TJ Dillashaw. That's essentially what it is. It's a shame that one of them has to kill the other one off, although technically Assuncao has already killed off Moraes as a contender with his win over him a year and a half ago. So, I mean, it's a good main event. It's a good main event. I'm looking forward to it. I just wish this fight wasn't happening the way it is happening.
Yeah, but I mean, we know why. Shout out to Ali Abdelaziz. Moving on. Jose Aldo versus Renato Moicano. This is a fight that I flip-flopped a lot in, I'll be honest. I think Jose Aldo, even though he is the underdog, I think he should be the favorite in this in a lot of ways. I think he showed us that he's still relatively an elite competitor against Jeremy Stevens. He still showed us the elite striking ability, the heavy power in both his hands and his kicks. Moicano is no slouch. I think he has every evolving striking ability. I think his grappling ability is quite adept at this level. Obviously, submitting Cub Swanson in a round is quite impressive, even though it is this version of Cub Swanson. But I've always felt like Moicano has been a guy to let fights be closer than they are. Jeremy Stevens' fight for him, for example, it's another one that was extremely close, competitive, controversial in a way. I feel like Jose Aldo is the better closer. Like, he's better at being dominant. He's better at figuring out his opponent and separating the gap farther and farther on who is winning. He's really good at that. He might struggle in a round or two, but his ability to go, okay, this is what I needed to do to win, and really execute that obviously goes back to how much of a great fighter Jose Aldo is. I'm going to pick Jose Aldo slightly. I'll be honest. I'm going to pick him by KO or TKO within 2 rounds. I don't think he goes into the third. If he does go in the third, it's going all the way. But if Jose Aldo looks subpar in this fight, if he looks like he is out of his depth on the ground in some way, that's another sign that this version of Jose Aldo isn't the same version that demolished the featherweight division for nearly a decade plus. But I really like this fight. Huge crossroads fight. You have the former kingpin of that division, Brazilian legend versus the new Brazilian upstart. I love the storyline of that. Just from like a poetic standpoint, you could write a novel about this fight in some way and make it dramatized, obviously, and it would sell. Because it's old versus new. It's the young potentially eating the old, and I love that story. But I think Jose Aldo is going to turn back the clock just a little bit. Your thoughts on this fight?
I'm kind of leaning toward Aldo as well, and a lot of for the same reasons that you are, because as good as Moicano is, and without a doubt, he is definitely one of the best featherweights out right now. If you put Moicano in a title fight against Max Holloway right now, if you took him out of this Aldo fight and put him in against Holloway, I'm not mad about that at all. And part of me wants Moicano to win so we can have that Holloway Moicano fight. Like I definitely would like to see that. But he also, like you said, he allows fights to be close. Even when, like, you look at the Brian Ortega fight, I mean, he was really winning that fight. Like he was taking it to Ortega for the majority of that fight, and Ortega found that Hail Mary submission and got him. The Stevens fight was closer than it probably should have been. And correct me if I'm wrong. I'm kind of remembering the Calvin Kattar win being kind of close also.
Yes.
So like I think Moicano, he doesn't just go in and dominate and just swarm in somebody the way Aldo can. Like Aldo just has, like, it's almost like Aldo has like a bloodlust to him or something. It's like he sniffs out that weakness and he attacks and attacks and attacks. And I think the way Moicano just kind of plays it by ear almost, and and lets things kind of flow and happen. That's a dangerous game to play against somebody like Aldo, who once he has you hurt, you're probably not going to escape that.
Absolutely. And I think with a guy like Aldo, you don't want to give him time. You don't want to give him space. You want to constrict those two things as much as possible. Chad Mendes in the second fight, when he had his success, it was when he was pressuring Aldo. It was when he was making Aldo feel uncomfortable. For Max Holloway, for example, the times that he was winning, it was because he was like a tsunami, making Aldo uncomfortable, the pressure, the volume.
And same thing with the Frankie Edgar fights. When Frankie had his best moments, it was because he was in Aldo's face and moving around to where it was hard for him to get his footing and set up his shots.
And I feel like Moicano is going to go in there and just sort of fight in a way. And I feel like he doesn't have a clear game plan from what I've seen in most of his fights, and that's just a very concerning issue at the very top level. You can beat the Jeremy Stevens slightly without really having a game plan if you're just highly talented, right?
Because he's also a guy who tends to not have game plans. Yeah. At least like scientific game plans.
Yeah, exactly. But if you want to beat a Max Holloway and you don't have a game plan, there's a major issue there in my mind. I will say this. If Moicano does win this fight, is he more deserving of a shot than obviously a guy like
Volkanovski?
Yeah,
I would give Moicano the shot over Volkanovski. I think his Moicano's resume is stronger. Volkanovski, I mean, definitely he took it to Chad Mendes at UFC 232, and that was very, very impressive. But I think we should also keep in mind what Moicano has done to some very capable men, and I think his body of work looks a lot better on paper than Volkanovski from where I'm sitting right now.
Agree with that. I just want to throw that out there because, man, Volkanovski, for our boy Patrick Wyman out there, man, he's the goods. I can't wait for that title shot against Max Holloway. That's going to be insane. I will definitely be on Twitter with a campaign saying bring back Patrick Wyman for heavy hands, just for that breakdown. But digressing, Damian Maia versus Lyman Good, a fight that I really like because I think we're gonna see how much Damian Maia has left in the tank. A guy that is old, just to put it plainly. A guy that his last run at greatness was what we just saw, and into a Tyron Woodley absolutely dominating him in a slightly boring affair. And Lyman Good's a guy that's been around the block for a long time. A guy that I want to say fought in Strikeforce for a while, and I think he fought in Dream. He's been around the block for quite a bit. A guy that I've seen spar high-level boxers, high-level MMA guys. Lyman Good's a very talented, all-around Tiger Strowman fighter. So again, one of those really good fights we're going to tell is Lyman Good sort of putting it all together. Is Damian Maia slipping and fading? This is the fight to tell that. I'm going to pick slightly Lyman Good. I think obviously if Damian Maia gets this to the ground, it's pretty much a wrap. But I think Lyman Good's counter wrestling ability has improved. I've seen his boxing ability. It is high level. I've seen him spar Marcus Brown, who just got his mandatory shot against Vajdic this last weekend, beating Badu Jack. I've seen him spar Marcus Brown for, 8 rounds, 10 rounds, hard sparring. Lyman Good's very talented, so I'm picking Good slightly. Your thoughts on the fight, Anthony?
I agree. I think Lyman Good should walk away with the win. I think that the thing is, of course, if you are on the floor with Damian Maia, you're probably not going to survive. But can Damian Maia get it there? Mm-hmm. And against a lot of guys, he probably can. And Damian Maia has definitely improved his wrestling, particularly his chain takedown attempts have just gotten so much better than they were his days at middleweight. But Lyman Good, I think, is just the far superior athlete. On top of that, he's a very strong guy. He's also a longtime veteran. Mm-hmm. I mean, put it this way, he fought Mike Dolce in IFL. That's how far back he goes.
The IFL days.
Yeah, he's
also
been for a long time.
Back in there, Mike Dolce was a fighter. Good times.
Yeah. Before Mike Dolce was making everybody eat Greek yogurt instead of sour cream. That's what he was doing. He was fighting in IFL against Lyman Good. Lyman Good, man, I think also will hurt you big time on the feet if you can't get it there. If you can't get it to the ground, he's going to hurt you. Damian Maia is, it's no secret, he's not exactly the best boxer on the welterweight roster. So I don't see outside of some wild scramble or a slip and fall or something I don't see how Damian Maia gets it to where he's the strongest. And also he is older than Good. He's got a little more miles on him. I think this might be the beginning of the Damian Maia swan song.
Absolutely agree with that. Last fight on the card we're going to break down in any capacity: Charles Oliveira versus David Timur. Really a good step-up fight for David Timur, one that I think he's been asking for a while. I think I've been asking for a while. I think David Timur is absolutely a very talented, all-around fighter. I think his kickboxing is absolutely top-notch. Charles Oliveira is one of those guys that, obviously he holds the record for most submissions in the UFC. At any time, he could snatch an arm, snatch a limb, snatch a neck, and it's over. And on top of that, I think he's always had underrated Muay Thai skill. It's a fantastic fight. I can't wait to see. I think I'm picking Timur slightly, only because I think Charles Oliveira's always dropped the ball on these types of fights. I feel like he's always had bad IQ, bad fight IQ. He's always made very poor decisions at the worst times. And Timur looks like a guy who's always making the right decisions, always making the right tactical calls, has the right game plan set in mind. And I always sort of favor that aspect of fighting more so than just a guy that's extremely gifted, like a Charles Oliveira. I think he is probably the more gifted fighter of the two. But Timur is probably the more fundamental, methodical fighter of them. So I'm picking Timur. Your thoughts on the fight, Anthony?
I'm picking Timur because I just have a hard time trusting Oliveira. And when you see him have a really good performance, his next fight, he probably does something really foolish. And then on top of that, here's another thing to remember. This fight is contested at 155, I believe.
Yes.
So his last one, I think, was also 155. He weighed in at like 152 or something like that, which means Charles Oliveira is probably going to come in about 5 pounds overweight for this because he has to balance it out. There's no way that Charles Oliveira is just doing too many good things at one time and consecutively. And no, I just don't see it. Like, he's proven himself to be the guy that's gonna be himself. I think he finds a way to be himself, which leads to him getting the L.
He is definitely like a Rusmar Palhares. Like, he is definitely of that Brazilian stereotype, unfortunately, of fighters where it's just like, what are you thinking, man? Like, there's so many times of Oliveira's career, you're like, what were you thinking?
I'm just waiting for him to submit himself. Like, that's what I'm waiting on next.
That would be awesome.
I'm waiting for him to heel hook himself or something.
And I will say this, him consistently saying in every media interview he's been in, hey, I'm going back to 145. I'm going back to 145.
No, you're not.
And then him missing weight for a 155 fight would be the most Charles Oliveira-like move that I could foresee. So I'm actually hoping that happens.
Like, do Bronx never change?
Yes, please never change. Brief mention, Thiago Alves versus Max Griffin on the card as well in the preliminary portion. All the fights on ESPN Plus. I don't know why they actually keep making this delineation between prelims and main card if it's all on the same platform. Digressing from that stupid programming issue I have, Max Griffin probably should win this fight. And honestly, Thiago Alves, he's probably should retire at this point. And if it is great career, Thiago Alves, and this can be a hard fight for you to walk out on, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's Max Griffin is absolutely no joke. Like, that is not a guy you want to take lightly. So I think Alves is going to have all he can handle.
Absolutely agree. Moving on to the Bellator card this weekend, a fight that me and Anthony will be at. Yes.
I want smoke.
I'll be honest, Anthony. I can only really talk about 2 fights on the card.
Me too.
Right? I'm looking at it now. I'm like, holy shit, who are these names?
I'm gonna go back to pull up the card again. There were a couple of names.
I'll just put this for reference, right? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. There are 16 fights on this card.
We have a long Saturday ahead
16 fights. I didn't realize there was that many fights. 16.
Yeah.
To put this in comparison here, people, okay? So there's, 32 fighters total on this card? There is 1, 2, 3, 4 people that have Wikipedia pages. 32 fighters. 4 of them have Wikipedia pages.
Yeah.
All of them have ShareDog fighter profiles, though. Shout out to ShareDog. I don't know how you guys do it. But goddamn, this is just a... Like, I love the main event. I love the co-main. God, Aaron Pico versus Henry Corrales. I love that fight. But the rest of this card, this is a rough one, man. I'll be honest.
Yeah. I mean, this is the typical Bellator card right here. You load the card up with a lot of local guys that are going to put butts in seats, and then you've got a couple of stars at the top. And that's pretty much it. Because of course the building is going to be packed for Fedor.
Oh yeah.
Nobody's walking away before the Fedor fight. But they'll be there on time for most of the prelims because hey, they're guys that train 3 blocks down the street from the Forum. Like that's really what the card is going to be comprised of.
Absolutely agree. It's just like, stitching it back to Greg Hardy and, his placement meritocracy. He doesn't even belong on like a main card of Bellator. I'll just say that. Just putting it out there.
There were more qualified guys on the prelims of Golden Boy MMA than Greg Hardy.
I wouldn't go that far, but just
I was just
Yeah, you said that.
You're right. Golden Boy MMA, total trash. Total trash. I'm going to trash that event as often as possible.
I only know 3 people. Sorry, I know more than 3 people. But like, to be honest, the 3 people I really remember from that card obviously is Chuck and Tito.
And Deron Wynn.
And Wynn. I know Tom Lawler was on the card, but like I really don't remember him being on the card. I don't think I even saw the fight.
He was the guy that Deron Wynn was beating to a bloody pulp.
See, I'll be honest. I probably, maybe, most likely did not watch that fight.
You probably, most likely, maybe saved yourself some hard-earned money that didn't deserve going to that pay-per-view.
I spent all back in Pacquiao Broner though.
Well, you actually missed. They shouted me out on the broadcast, ironically, on the Golden Boy MMA one.
Really?
Yeah. Apparently, some tweet, something that I tweeted from Cage Side. They put it on the broadcast, and I started getting tweets like, oh man, you got shouted out on the show. I was like, oh man, I guess they didn't read the rest of my feed. Oh man,
I was about to say, like, was it a tweet they did not understand? Because
it was something about the fight that was going on at the time.
Okay,
but it wasn't like an overall like, oh wow, this card's great. #trash. No, it wasn't anything like that.
Anyways, moving on to the fight itself at the Forum on DAZN and Paramount Network. Fedor Emelianenko versus Ryan Bader. I mean, this is pretty much a very clear pick in my mind. Ryan Bader should win this one by KO within, 4 minutes? 3 minutes? It's rather unfortunate, but, I mean, maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago, this is a fight that could have been something. You know, if you sort of magically put this version of Ryan Bader versus a 2007 version of Fedor Emelianenko, I love that fight, but it's not. It's 2019. Fedor Emelianenko has looked poor in all of his fights as of late. Ryan Bader has looked like an absolute stud. I think he's going to either knock out Fedor standing up or take Fedor down and beat him into a pulp, Bigfoot Silva style. And it's going to be really hard to watch.
Yeah, that's kind of how I see the fight going to. I think Bader gets an early takedown and just pummels him until the ref peels him off. I think that's probably what's going to happen. But here's the cool thing about this with Fedor Emelianenko. Like, he may be old. He may not be what he was in his Pride days or even his Strikeforce days. But, man, he's still Fedor. It's still like that aura about him. Because is it completely out of the realm of possibility that Fedor lands that right hand and sleeps him? Because keep in mind, Bader is the same guy that should have smoked Tito Ortiz but found himself tapping out.
Yeah, but I mean, look at, to Tito's credit, I mean, he's had a pretty good, last 5-10 years of his career. I mean, that win set off a career renaissance for Tito that he's still sort of on in a way. You know what I mean? Like,
I think I remember Rashad caving his ribcage in.
Yeah, but that was still
after that.
That was still a really good version. That was Rashad before the John Jones fight, even. Like, that was still that was Rashad only recently.
That was like the beginning of Black Zillions. That
was a great version of Rashad Evans. That was when his boxing ability really started getting some more technique around it. Shout out to Miss Walker chopping up whatever she's chopping up in the back. Shout out to her, man. I love it. Gotta keep Anthony fed, of course, right? Yes, it's still the Ryan Bader that lost Tito Ortiz that long ago, but it's still the same Tito Ortiz that is still on a run as of late. You know what I mean? Like, that loss is looking less and less bad as time is going on. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right about that. Honestly, that's an angle I didn't even really think about. I'm thinking about at that time, Tito was on such a bad streak, and oh man, Bader was this emerging guy who was just smashing everybody they put in front of him. I think by then he had already lost to John Jones though. But of course, what's the shame in losing to John Jones? Mm-hmm. So I mean, he was supposed to smoke him. That was what was supposed to happen. And then you look at Bader also getting taken out by Machida because he made a horrible tactical error and charged in chin first, at an expert counter striker. So there is that chance that Bader
Glover Teixeira knocked him out. Anthony Johnson knocked him out. There is clearly a pattern here with Ryan Bader and getting knocked out. So if anyone could pull off that knockout win upset, it is Fedor. Like, could I see not to this level, but can I see Ryan Bader pulling off a tactical error like Andrei Arlovsky and getting knocked out by overhand right? Absolutely. Don't get me wrong. But do I think that's the most probable outcome? No. That's not the highest probability. Mm-hmm. But I think
And I think that's kind of just an advantage that Fedor has as far as drawing people to watch a fight or to be in the building to see him fight. It's just, it's just that chance that it can happen because it's happened so many times before.
Absolutely agree. Aaron Pico versus Henry Corrales. Henry Corrales still doesn't have a Wikipedia page. That's actually really like depressing in a way. Like, how does that?
Wow, that's strange. Yeah.
Wait, Jack Hager has a Wikipedia page, but Henry Corrales doesn't. Weird. But Aaron Pico versus
that's the pro wrestler, right?
Is he a pro wrestler? I didn't even know.
Was that Jack Swagger or whatever? Is that his name? That's the pro wrestler making his MMA debut.
Yes.
Okay, so that explains because he definitely didn't get that Wikipedia page from MMA.
No. Okay, I didn't know he was a pro wrestler because I don't care about pro wrestling, unlike you. Delinquents.
I don't watch. I don't watch pro wrestling of the peasants. Okay, I don't watch WWE and and all those little trash storylines. Sorry, New Japan and PWG. Okay, that's what I watch. I am a connoisseur of the finest of pro wrestling. Okay, and don't hit the little game show fail sound effect. I know that's what you about to press. Don't press that button, bro.
That's fucking illegal.
Anyways, Aaron Pico versus Henry Corrales. I think Aaron Pico should win this. I think he has the better wrestling base. Obviously, his hands have become extremely deadly. He's trained by why is it leaving me?
Antonio McKee.
Thank you. Because I've met Antonio McKee like dozens of times. Great guy.
Funny dude, really funny.
I mean, amazing guy. I mean, his son's awesome as well. I mean, you have in that sort of team, camp, whatever you want to say, some extreme talent and some really great teaching happening there. Aaron Pico, I think, is a star for Bellator. Like he is probably their best prospect they have. He has, I think, the swagger. He has the charisma. He has the knockouts. He has the wrestling base. The guy has it all. And I think Henry Corrales is going to present a really fun fight and style matchup for Aaron Pico. I think it's going to be a tough fight for Pico. I think there's going to be times where he's maybe even gets hurt, has to, maybe get off his back at times. But I do think Pico is going to actually piece up Corrales at some point and get a late fight finish, late second round, early third round, and it be another breakout performance for Pico. Your thoughts on the fight?
You know what? I think this fight is going to be easier for Pico than what you're saying. Corrales is definitely a legit opponent. He definitely can. He has the capabilities on paper to give him some work. But as far as like the wrestling goes, I mean, Pico was in consideration for the Olympics. Mm-hmm. That is about as high as a quality wrestler as you can get.
Just to clarify why I bring up why he could get taken out a couple times is because I think Pico's at that stage of his prospect hype train where he's going to start believing in that boxing and that power. And I could see him, let's say, in that first round, going for broke on Henry Corrales, trying to make a huge showcase performance out of it. And Corrales catching him in a takedown, catching him getting sloppy. I can see that. I can see Pico getting sloppy in this fight because he wants to put on performance. This is his biggest fight to date. He is going to be the most amped up for it. I could sort of see that aspect to it, more so than Corrales having any sort of technical advantage over Pico, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying too, but I don't. I think you're underselling Pico's fight IQ on this one because
right,
like the last fight, Leandro Higo, I think it was, he was able to maintain a certain level of patience and very measured in his approach, yet he still destroyed him. I mean, that is a very, very scary thing. Like, quite honestly, the guys who've been able to be patient and still destroy somebody very rarely come around like that. That performance reminded me of like vintage Anderson Silva sort of stuff, where he can just smoke you at any moment, but he doesn't quite have to push the pace to do it. And that's the scariest sort of guy I think you can face.
It's like assassin, like the way he dismantled Higa. Like it was accurate, brutal, but like methodical at the same time. That's a deadly combination. Anthony, any last thoughts on the fights coming up this weekend? Any last thoughts on the fights we had this last weekend? Because it is time to wrap up. I
think that kind of does it for the UFC Brooklyn card. Adrian Bronner's a fool.
Hey, he won that, didn't he?
Oh, very clearly.
Hey, he did that for the hood, man. Like, come on.
Yeah, did that for the hood. Them. Sorry, hood pass revoked on that one, bro. Like,
yo, the memes were good, man.
Man, this guy. I mean, at this point, like he's got to be trolling. He has to be trolling, or is he really that delusional?
I think he's that delusional.
Man, I tell you, and his corner didn't do him any favors. His corner was really having him believing he was doing something in that fight. I use the term "fight" very loosely.
He lost like every round, man. Like it was dominant. Bad.
Yeah, that was bad. So that was, I wanted, if I had time, because I had a lot of stuff going on. If I had time, I wanted to call into that review show just to get that off my chest. But I missed my shot, so I had to take it now.
I think I have never heard the streets, the hood, ever be that consensus about a topic in my life. Right? Like I've never heard the barbershop all in agreement before.
Yeah,
no argument.
The only time the barbershop has agreed on anything is anything anti-Trump. That's about it.
Yes. And that's sad that now the barbershop is on agreement for two subjects. Broner not winning that fight and no longer representing them, and how much of an asshole and racist Trump is. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, at this point,
Facts.
I think Bronner needs to rebrand. He needs to align himself with Trump. He needs to walk out to the ring with a MAGA hat bumping Kanye. That's what he needs to do.
Okay, look, I know like it's the end of the show, but oh my God, I want to see that. Like you have no idea. Like I would love to see just the internet react to Adrian Broner going the Kanye route. And you know what? That would be funny. I would be interested in that.
I'm there.
I'm there for that.
Along with the hood them.
Anthony, where can the people find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Ant Walker MMA. That's also my Instagram name. Also tomorrow, normally we do the show on Thursdays, but because of my live duties, I got a karate combat event to go to Thursday night. So we're doing the Sherdog.com live chant, The Trenches. So go to the Sherdog.com YouTube page and check that out. Go ahead, drop your questions. You could tweet those to me as well, or post them on the forum page. So looking forward to your participation. And yeah. And also, of course, we'll be at Bellator. So there'll be plenty of coverage on Sherdog.com, courtesy of myself and Hipster Hunter. So look out for that.
Yes. Media workout is also tomorrow. I won't be able to go there. Anthony will. And then I believe Thursday is press conference. Friday is obviously the weigh-in. And then Saturday is the 16-fight card of Bellator. God, Anthony, I'll be honest. If I knew it was a 16-fight card, I might have said no.
Well, fortunately, no one cares about the first few fights. Like they're...
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, media room, Red Bulls, and whatever food they've prepared.
I'll definitely make sure that I am watching both the Thurman card on Fox, and there's the UFC card. I'll make sure I watch all of those at the same time instead.
Yeah, that's we're gonna have a busy night. That's for sure.
Insane busy night. You can find me, Matt Hunter, MCR, all platforms. Make sure you guys smash the like button, share the show, subscribe. And obviously, if you're listening, head over to patreon.com/Mixed Comment Radio to help support the show in any financial way. If it's on podcast, drop that 5-star review. And have a great day. Peace.